So we need to awaken in ourselves the capacity to experience this great love. So it's all around, and some of us feel it, and some of us don't feel it. And that's what I want us to do this morning, and maybe always, to awaken the capacity to feel this great love, so then we can know it, and then it enables us to express it more fully in the world. What did we say? We said that we live in love. I live in love and create a community of harmony wherever I go. So I want to share a story with you that expresses this capacity. It's a true story. It was written by Father John Powell while he was a professor at Loyola University in Chicago, and it's about a student in his theology of faith class. Doesn't that sound good? Theology of faith class. And this student's name was Tommy, and he turned out to be the atheist in residence, of course, and he was always objecting to and smirking and whining about the possibility of a loving God. And, I'll share now what Powell writes. He said, "We lived with each other in relative peace for one semester, although I admit he was, for me, at times a serious pain in the back pew. When he came up at the end of the course to turn in his final exam, he said in a cynical tone, 'Professor, do you think I'll ever find God?' And Powell instantly decided on a little shock therapy. 'No,' he said quite happily. 'Why not?' Tommy responded. 'I thought that was the product you were pushing.' Powell let him get 5 steps out of the classroom door, and then he called out, 'Tommy, I don't think you'll ever find God, but I'm absolutely certain God will find you.' And later Powell heard that Tommy had graduated and was off on his life path, and then a sad report came. He heard that Tommy had terminal cancer, and before he could search him out, Tommy came to see his old professor. And he walked into the office. He didn't look as good as he'd done when he was a college freshman, and his hair had fallen out, and he was suffering from the effect of medications, but his eyes were bright, his voice was firm, perhaps more than ever before. And Tommy said, "Professor, I'm very sick, and it's just a matter of a short time, but before I want to go, I want to talk to you about something you said to me in that last class. I asked you if you ever thought I would find God, and you said no, which surprised me, but you said that God would find me. And I thought a lot about it, although my search for God was hardly intense at that time, but when the doctors removed a lump from my groin and told me it was malignant, that's when I got serious about locating God. And when the malignancy spread into my vital organs, I really began banging bloody fists against the bronze doors of heaven. But God didn't come out of those doors. In fact, nothing happened. Did you ever try to do anything for a long time with a lot of effort and no success? You get psychologically gutted. You get fed up with trying, and then you quit," Tom said. But one day, he said, "I woke up, and instead of throwing a few more futile appeals over that high brick wall to a God who may or may not be there, I just quit. I decided that I didn't really care about God, or an afterlife, or anything like that. I decided to spend what time I had left doing something more profitable. And I thought about something you said in your class, and this was it. The essential sadness is to go through life without loving. Essential sadness is to go through life without loving. But it would be almost equally sad to go through life and leave this world without ever telling those you love that you love them." And so I began with the hardest one, my dad. And he was reading the newspaper. I approached him, "Dad." And "Yes," he said without lowering the paper. "Dad, I want to talk to you." "Well, talk," he said. "Well, it's important." And the paper came down 3 inches. "What is it?" "Dad, I love you, and I just want you to know that." And Tom smiled as he spoke, as though he felt a warm, secret joy flowing inside of him, and the newspaper flooded to the floor. And then my father did 2 things I could never remember him doing. He cried, and he hugged me. And we talked all night, even though I had to go to work the next day, even though he had to go to work the next day. And it felt so good to be close to him, to see his tears, to feel his hug, to hear him say that he loved me. And it was easier with my mother and my little brother. They cried with me too. We hugged each other and started to say nice things to each other for the first time ever. We shared the things we had been keeping secret for so long. And the only thing I was sorry for was that I'd waited so long. Here I was just beginning to open up to all the people that I'd actually be close to. And then one day I turned around, and God was there. God wasn't there when I begged and when I pleaded. Apparently God does God's own things in God's own time. But the important thing is that God was there. God found me. God found me when I stopped looking for God, when I surrendered. So Tommy, asked the professor, I think you're saying something so important, much more universal. And I want to ask you a favor. When you were in my class, you were a real pain. But you can make it up for me now. Will you come to my present Theology of Faith course and tell them what you just told me? I feel that if I told them, it wouldn't be half the effect that you told them. Ooh, I was ready for you, but I don't know if I'm ready for your class, Tommy said. But they scheduled a date, and Tommy, unfortunately, wasn't able to make that date. And before he died, they talked one last time. I'm not going to make it to your class, he said. I know, Tom. Will you tell them for me, Tommy said. Will you tell the whole world for me? I will, Tom. I'll tell them. I'll do my best. And so Professor Powell finishes by saying, so to all of you who've been kind enough to listen to this simple story about God's love, thank you for listening. And to you, Tommy, somewhere in the sunlit, verdant hills of heaven, I told them, Tommy, I told them the best that I could. So we must awaken in ourselves the capacity to experience, to feel this mighty love, so we can know how grand the love is for us, that is bigger and grander than we can ever imagine, but that works in and through and as each one of us.